Women's national team versus Canada match, which was the semifinals, in which Canada ended up besting the US by a scoreline of 1-0. My overall thoughts on this match, despite the result and the way that the games have been going up to this point, I want to say I don't think that the US actually played all that bad. Let me explain a little bit more. They had a majority of the possession. If I'm not mistaken, they had 52% possession to Canada's 48, and they also had like quadruple the shots that Canada had. I believe they had 17 shots to Canada's 5, and then I believe it was 6-2 when it comes to shots on goal. Let me double check my notes real quick. I'm sorry. It was 56% possession for the US, 17 shots, and 6 on goal. While for Canada, it was 44% possession, 6 shots in total, and 2 on goal. So the US had a lot of chances in order to score in this game. However, I think Megan Rapinoe really summed it up best in her post-match interview. It just wasn't clicking for them. And I would completely agree with that. There were many points where, again, they had this problem in this game where the passes weren't quite right. Through balls would always go awry. Even just normal passing just to get the ball into the final third and maneuver through the final third were a lot of times just not quite on the mark, and the US just couldn't recover. It would be, especially in the second half, it would be this repeated pattern of Canada would give up the ball, US would have it, US would coordinate an attack, then give it away on a poor pass. Then the process would just repeat, and I swear it was from like the 50th minute to the 80th minute where this kept occurring, all the way pretty much up until the penalty was earned by Deanna Rose in next to Tierna Davidson. And let's actually kind of jump into that penalty really quickly. I initially watching it thought that it was a really weak call. It, to me, looked like Deanna Rose kind of sold it a little bit in terms of the theatrics. However, when they did go to VAR and they took a second look at it, I did not realize Tierna Davidson had actually undercut Deanna Rose's leg, which would prompt the penalty call. So I would support the call, which, as a US fan, myself included, obviously, in that argument, you can kind of grumble like, oh, of course, the first time they have, or the second time, I should say, the second time they have VAR comes back to bite the US in that case. But overall, like I said, it was a good call nonetheless. It was the right call. And I got to give it to Fleming. She had a phenomenal penalty to go ahead and end up sealing the win for Canada. Top right bins. Adriana Franch, I got to give it to her. She did a good job of at least guessing where the ball was going. It's just there's no saving that penalty from that close. It was a rocket. It was exactly where she needed it to be in order to get the job done. A little side note, this was also the game that we saw a listener go down with an injury in the first half, which the injury looks to be somewhat severe. I mean, she was walking on crutches by the time the game was over. I'm not exactly sure what injury she sustained. I don't think it was a ligament injury, but it was some sort of hyperextension of her knee where she couldn't end up finishing the tournament. But I guess out of all times to really get injured, you'd rather be hurt at the end of the tournament rather before it starts and at the beginning. So take that for what you will. I hope a listener has a really speedy recovery in that respect. I thought Adriana Franch held her own playing as well. I thought she played well. And Adriana Franch, I think, is a world-class goalkeeper that often gets overlooked, which I guess you can understand because she's been pretty much injured for like the last year and a half leading up to the Olympic competition. So take that for what you will. But I was happy to see her play, and I was happy to see her do okay. So good on her for that. One thing I kind of glossed over too when it comes to the US's chances in this particular match, their set pieces actually weren't too bad. There's a few that come to mind for me where Julie Ertz actually had a couple of headers on target or got her head to the ball in dangerous spots. So we can kind of see some vintage Julie Ertz get in there and making a difference on those set pieces and causing havoc. And you could almost make the case for Lindsay Horan too. There were a couple of times she had a header in some dangerous spots as well. So like I said, the US just had a lot of chances. It's just like Megan Rapinoe said, it wasn't clicking for them and they just couldn't get over the line. And sometimes a penalty is all you really need to win the game. And as I mentioned earlier with Canada, they've been doing this all tournament long. They've been playing their game, which is kind of letting their opponents have the ball, have a majority of the possession, let them be on the front foot, and then just get in a goal or just win on penalties and score when they need to. And they played in a really weird way their game this time around. So I got to give it to them. Their plan worked and they came out victorious and they ended up winning it all. So there's not much really left to say other than that. So let me just double check my initial thoughts, or my final thoughts for this particular game. Yes, there's one other thing I want to say, which I think sank the hearts of all of us. Right after Fleming scored her penalty, about 10 minutes later, Megan Rapinoe had a wonderful cross to Carly Lloyd, who just crushed the crossbar. And at that point, I think that really sums up the tournament for the US in general. I think that was the third time that they've hit the post or the crossbar in this tournament. They hit it twice against Sweden, so I guess you could really say for them, to some extent, if you told me that the US was unlucky at some points in this tournament, I think you'd be right, and I think that's a fair statement, especially since when you hit the post that many times in really opportune moments, that really sucks. If you go all the way back to the first game of this tournament against Sweden, it was 1-0, Rose crushed the post, and that could have tied the game right before half and really changed the course of the entire tournament. So, and then we fast forward to now with Carly Lloyd getting her header that would have tied the game off the crossbar. So it's like, it's just football. In a word, just football. That's just kind of how it goes sometimes. Do I want to attribute the results of the US entirely due to luck? Absolutely not, because I don't think that they had a particularly great tournament, but I'll touch on that a little bit later on. But overall, my friends, I don't think the US played poorly. I think that they just couldn't quite click offensively. Some of their passes went awry, and they just weren't able to put it together. But that's just my thoughts on the match. I want to know what you made of the Canada match, though. Whatever you think, you know where the comment section is. Let me know.